afternoon. Picture this. A nation on the rise, embracing the power of the digital era. In a world where technology is advancing at lightning speed, every country must stay ahead of the curve to thrive. Sri Lanka, a country known for its rich history and stunning landscapes, is now embracing a digital transformation, but not as fast as we hoped for in order to redefine our future. With a strong focus on digitization, Sri Lanka can unlock countless opportunities across sectors and ultimately boost our economy. By embracing cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and digital payments, the nation can revolutionize industries, create new jobs, and attract foreign investments. Already, we see countless success stories emerging from Sri Lanka's digital revolution.
If we had implemented an outward-looking program, we should have not been in the economic crisis we are today. We should have at least 5 to 8 billion US in exports. Even if there is no need to cry over spilled milk, I think this is the last bus that we have. Either we've got to take it or we are going to miss it forever. If we are to succeed economically, then the digital transformation has to take.
For opinions, insights, and analysis, joining me this afternoon is the founder and CEO of WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarna, founder and executive director of BoardPack, Lakshmini Vijayasundara, Chief Operating Officer for Digital Transformation at Brandix, and the former chairman of Information and Communications Technology Agency Sri Lanka, Oshada Senanayaka, and CEO of Trisenk Australia, economist Imran Furka.
This is another Derana 24 special presentation. Digitizing Sri Lanka. Can it resuscitate our ailing economy? Now, reporting live from Studio 24, here's Mahesh Jani.
Hello, thank you for joining us on this special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. Now, why did we want to do a special segment on this subject? It's very evident since the last presidential election back in 2019 that all political candidates, politicians, entrepreneurs, every single person in this country have been talking about how Sri Lanka can harness the benefits of the digital era. However, has not been able to do that thus far. Now, with the economic crisis that we witnessed last year, Sri Lanka is now in a unique position to reinvent itself. We can reinvent our thinking, our society, our political culture, our way of life, our businesses, and how we as Sri Lankans continue to live our lives on this so-called paradise island. But alas, what we do is more of the same. Be it in the society, politics, our way of life, our businesses, we still seek the old ways and not push ourselves for a newer avenue, because what we know so far is very much comfortable for us, but we don't want to push ourselves to the unknown. However, there are industries that are slowly redefining themselves and not waiting for the government to come and bail them out. The IT sector seems to be one such industry where we seem to have a vast potential to gain better yields for the output we provide. Now, organizations like WSO2, BoardPack, and even Brandix are such examples where they have tapped into the resource of digitizing their businesses and gaining the maximum bang for the buck. However, there's a lot we can do as the entire country. After all, the whole nation knows how to surf porn, right? In certain instances, we are record holders of that, meaning our knowledge in such that we have some kind of a technological know-how to navigate this vast space. Now, imagine if we can push ourselves to utilize technology for such an utterly useless activity. Don't you think that it's time that we push this knowledge in technology to benefit individually, as a society, as a group, and as a country as a whole? And that's exactly what I want to discuss today. Can Sri Lanka's ailing economy get a boost from the ICT sector of our nation? What are the real opportunities? What is the potential? And can we stay ahead of the curve? Questions I hope to find some answers too this afternoon. But where are we right now in terms of this sector? Here's a brief look.
Sri Lanka, situated as a radiant gem in the Indian Ocean, renowned for its abundant cultural heritage and natural splendor, is swiftly emerging as a recognized player in the global IT BPM industry. As the nation actively embraces digitalization, enterprises are uncovering fresh approaches to connect with their audience and foster expansion. Although the annual growth rate of Sri Lanka's internet users has consistently achieved double-digit growth over the past decade, merely about 30% of the population is actively engaged online and on social media. The e-commerce sector in Sri Lanka has experienced remarkable growth, particularly in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. In comparison to the other emerging markets in Asia-Pacific region, Sri Lanka demonstrates notable strengths in terms of connectivity, digital marketing strategies, investments in digital initiatives, and the agility to adapt swiftly. However, when pitted against more advanced nations such as China and India, Sri Lanka lags significantly behind. More recently, content marketing in both Sinhala and English languages is increasingly employed to deliver value and establish authority. Being the first nation in South Asia to commercially launch 5G technology, Sri Lanka has a strong base of mobile phone subscriptions, with the rate of penetration on par with developed and high-income economies, and also ahead of its regional peers, having island-wide 4G coverage at a strong 95%. The Sri Lankan government has initiated multiple programs aimed at promoting digital adoption.
I would focus on the digital economy strategy that has been prepared by the Ministry of Technology in consultation with the World Bank team, which we have already finalized last week. The digital project that we are currently undertaking is the electronic payment systems. The third thing is the establishment of the Data Protection Authority. Another key project is the Cyber Security Regulatory Authority establishment. The other major project is the Gammata Sanvejana project, which is implemented by the TRCSL. There we are focusing on 10 districts to improve and enhance the connectivity, broadband connectivity in the country. It's coming as a budget proposal last year to give access to 10,000 schools internet connectivity.
Despite its growth, Sri Lanka's digital landscape grapples with challenges that include limited access to high-speed internet in rural regions and a noticeable digital skills deficit within the workforce, along with more to be desired in the soft skills aspect. This issue rings true specifically in the BPM sector. As Sri Lanka's digital transformation journey continues, businesses that embrace digitization are positioned for success in the emerging market.
Well, that's exactly what's happening right now, and we are hoping to go from that particular point. What are the opportunities we exactly have? What can we do? Where can we go with this? And can Sri Lanka lead the way? Because there's an opportunity, like you just saw. How can we harness this? Before that, let's take a short commercial break. Upon our return, I'll be speaking to the founder and CEO of WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarana, founder and executive director at Boardpack Lakshmini Vijayasundara, COO for digital transformation at Brandix, and the former chairman of ICTA, Oshada Senanayake, and of course, CEO of Trisank Australia, economist Imran Furqan. We'll be right back. This is our special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. Welcome back everyone to Digitizing Sri Lanka, our special presentation on exactly what's happening in this country with regard to this particular space and how we can actually harness the benefits of it. What are we not looking at? Where can we go? And what can we actually do different that would attract Sri Lanka as a destination for this particular sector? We talk about tourism, we talk about Ayurvedic stuff, we talk about a lot of stuff. But what can IT do? Because every single person, if you have a conversation, they always say about the fact that, you know, it is the future, digitizing the world, this and that and all those kinds of things. But if you look at what's happening, still our people even can't get PayPal. But I think there's an update on that. But before that, I want to introduce my guests. Welcome to the show, founder and CEO of WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarna. Good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. And also the founder and executive director at BoardPack, Lakshmini Vijayasundara. Welcome, madam. Good to see you. And CEO of Digital Transformation at Brandix, and also the former chairman of ICTA, Oshada Senanayaka. Oshada is actually my classmate. Good to know. Good to see you after a very long time.
Likewise, mine.
Good to see. And also very own CEO of Tresenk Australia, Imran Furkan, who have been here for quite some time. Gentlemen, lady, thank you very much for taking the time in order to share your ideas with regard to the industries that you all are working really hard. I just read an article that was reported in the island. It says volume of Sri Lanka's retail digital transaction is potentially around 77.2 trillion rupees. I think what's not happening, let me start with you, Sanjeeva. Why aren't we talk about this. Everybody is saying this, that, and even the president, the prime minister, you go into all these forums, everybody is saying, this is what we are doing. But nothing is happening in terms of tangible results. We see a little bit of companies doing their little thing, and they're actually doing very well if we can follow their example. But that is also not happening. What do you think? Where are the issues? What are the bottlenecks in your opinion?
So I think as a country, if you look at what's going on as a digital enablement of the country, the fundamental problem is that we haven't built the foundation. So you're trying to build a house without a foundation. And the foundation starts with identity and a few foundational things that you must put together. And we've had many attempts at getting it done, but for various reasons, some of them are reasonable, some of them are not reasonable. We haven't been able to get it done. But that's not to say, so if you look at the US, for example, there's no digital identity foundation in the US. Still, it's very, very digital. India is the opposite. Very strong digital identity foundation, and now becoming extremely digital. So payment is another key part. We have a lot of technology, we have very good stuff, but not quite getting into mainstream adoption. We still use cash. Right?
Exactly. Madam, what do you think the reason is for this? Because if everybody knows the importance of it, if everybody knows what we can actually do from this, why do you think we're not doing anything about it? Because last year we had a unimaginable level of economic crash, which we never thought would come in our lifetime in this country. And here we are, and most of these companies are trying to get the best out of this entire, and they're doing it also. It's not that we don't have examples. Your organizations and all are good examples of harnessing that benefit. What do you think? Where are we exactly no foundation, but beyond that?
So actually even though it's not evident, there is a lot of work being done. If you take the 1,000 startups, there's about 600 odd startups, out of which 65 are AI-enabled startups. So there's a lot of that done, but there's a lot of awareness also, I feel, that could improve. So that, this kind of question that you're asking me, some of it's already available with the public. So there's that element also. Of course, there's a lot more to be done, but it's not that it's not done completely. We're not at scratch, because over years, I think ICTA, SLASCOM, FITIS, all these different organizations have started working, but the speed could obviously increase a lot more for you all to see this organically. So if you take, you're talking about retail trading, purchasing. So there's lots of, if you take that ecosystem of 600 companies, a large number, I would say, is e-commerce. Actually, there was a high boom, obviously, during COVID. It has reduced again. As you know, we were all purchasing online, even our, goods from for food. But that has gone back. We're going back physically to shops now. So there's that element. There's a lot more to talk about that. Especially e-commerce, I think, picked up a lot. Education picked up a lot, digital. But overall, for the kind of improvements that Sanjeev is talking about, it should be wider.
Oshada, you worked in a government institution, the ICTA, which is exactly what Lakshmini mentioned. What happened there? Why couldn't we get into a space where we could have led the system in South Asia at least? Because it's not like we have 1 billion people here to cater, just 22 million. So putting policy in place, putting a strategy in place, what was the bottleneck?
Interesting question, Mahesh. So I will answer the first component of the question. For example, to allude to what Sanjeeva said, I think the foundations has to be intact. Now that is where the likes
Whose responsibility is that?
So there are multiple organizations that has to come into play. For example, so it's got to be a multi-disciplinary effort that has to go in, cutting across multiple public sector as well as private sector entities, in my opinion, from the experience I gathered on my public service stint. Now I'll explain the situation, right? See, the foundational element for any of a digital transformation to occur, whether it be on a country level or whether it be on an organizational level, is the fundamentals, right? The foundational elements. Let's take digital inclusivity. What do you mean by digital inclusivity? That's accessibility to internet, for example, right? That's one thing. Where do we stand there? Now we are talking about online
Where do we
e-commerce.
stand there?
Exactly, right? So accessibility is a huge challenge still. Okay, and that's where there are certain initiatives that have been started. But the reality is this has to be continued, irrespective of whatever changes, right? That this has to be foundational policies. Second thing is, you might have accessibility, coverage, but what about the availability of it and the affordability of it, right? Affordability is the next big if in terms of that. So you might have coverage or accessibility. Accessibility is not just connectivity, it's about devices also. Now we are talking about smartphone penetration in Sri Lanka. Any guesses where it is? So this has to be addressed.
Is it high or low?
It's low. It's absolutely low, because at the end of the day, you need to understand there's no coverage. One aspect is that. Then what you pay for a smartphone, right? The affordability, you need to look at the whole dimension of 22 million people, a population, whereas you can take up about 4.2 million of students and that demography. But the reality is those two elements has to come into place. But more importantly, the third piece is digital literacy. Okay, you might have access to a phone, you might have access to best of the connectivity or internet, but what about your digital literacy to basically consume these services or use these? So these are fundamental aspects that cuts across multiple agencies. For example, based on the International Telecommunication Union, connectivity is part of the 2030 2030 agenda of ITU. So all regulators basically have to come into play and ensure that we do our piece relevant to your own country. So that's one aspect. The likes of ICT, which is the GovTech, I would call it the GovTech. Singapore has its own, US has its own, UK has its own. So the GovTech has to basically look at the other elements of it, the digital literacy aspect of it, for example, right, the adoption piece. So all this has to converge, Mahesh. So that's where we need to ensure that there's continuity, irrespective of any structural changes or whatever you call it. So that's where I see the issue. All of these are start-stops in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, and let me come to Imran. You are a CEO of a company in Australia. Right now, I mean, you are a Sri Lankan and you keep moving here and there. Are you a Sri Lankan?
What do you
No, what I want to know is, what do you see there in Aussie that is actually, you know, better than what we have here? What have we not got as a country that could have actually a lesson we could learn from Australia?
Well, I think we should not take a lesson from Australia for the simple reason that they are way behind in terms of technological adoption, for example, to the US. And one of the things that CEOs keep telling me is, man, we are 10 years behind the US. So I wouldn't say Australia is a good example to take. I would say India is a good example to take. And there is where you see three things. Decisive leadership. So Narendra Modi wanted to digitize India. So what he did was he created a fake crisis. He demonetized certain notes and said you've got to deposit it in the system and then get a lower value notes. So everybody went, and so they realized they didn't have bank accounts to deposit this money, right? So they had to create bank accounts overnight. Stayed in queues, got it done. You need decisive leadership. That can also be private and public, right? So for example, if you take, I'd say two examples of state is in the US. The global positioning system, GPS, that we all use, it's a military application. Yeah. But there was a President, Ronald Reagan, who decided, you know what, why are we keeping this as a military secret? So he let let it be used by the private sector, and we all use it in our phones today. So decisive leadership is one. Second thing is fear, right? Why is digitization not happening with government departments, for example? Because the fear of being replaced, and that is a genuine fear, right? You've got to address it by showing them the opportunities that will come for them to increase their productivity. And therefore, now you complain that they go home at 4:30, 4, 3, whatever. They could be home much earlier, right?
Exactly.
So you got to show them, address this fear. And the third one is lack of awareness, as Lakmini says. Lack of awareness is a huge problem, right? And now we've worked.
Awareness on what exactly?
What technology is, what technology can do for you, and what it is not, and what's your role in it, right? Basic things. Right? And they have no idea how to do that. And take an example of why would you share an OTP?
Yeah.
Right? Why would you do that? It's coming to your phone, to your specified designated number. It's not a public thing. It's not on a WhatsApp group. But people do it. Adults do it. Bank CIOs have done it.
Sanjeev, let me, I was looking at your company's profile, and you started in 2005, and you all have been, the statistics are really staggering. 700 plus customers, 50,000 OEM, 5,000 plus OEM customers. So you all have succeeded in that particular platform. What are we not seeing as a country as a whole in order to understand, okay, it's not that you're just coming up and you're not a talking head, you're not just saying, for the sake of saying, you have put your, money where your mouth is, and you all have produced certain kinds of results. What is the first thing that the government is not learning from? Your abilities to expand and actually, the potential. Where do you see the mismatch?
So I think the first mismatch is we need to stop complaining about the government.
It has to be.
It has nothing to do with government, right? Do you make a product? Lucky has a company that makes a product. They have a lot of customers all over the world. We have customers in 90 countries. It's got nothing to do with government. You look at Facebook, PayPal. You mentioned something about PayPal. PayPal became the first sort of payment standard. There was no ICTA involved with that. There was no /com involved with that. It was a private company, right? India is different. India UPI was set up by a government as a standardized interface of payment. But and if you look at Infosys, those are service companies. If you look at some of the amazing successful product companies in India or any other country, they have nothing to do with government. So I think this idea that government is responsible to create innovation in the country is an excuse people are using.
And that is an excuse we are using all across the board.
All across the board. Blame the government, blame somebody else.
Because yesterday I saw a news item that was there, actually we broadcast, saying that there is heavy rain in the upcountry, and the people who are cultivating flowers has got impacted. They're asking the government to give us handouts. So this handout culture is right there. And what you just said was you didn't wait for a handout, you went and did your own thing. So what is a lesson that we can actually learn from? Because everybody is waiting for the ICTA to come and put the framework.
So there are two. I think there are a couple of different things. One is if you are building products for Sri Lanka, the market is small, the digital market. It is a fact. We have 22 million people, which is not small. Australia is about 30 million people. Canada is about 30 million people. Economies are huge. Digital economy is huge, right? So the absolute number is not small, but the digitally accessible, targetable market size is still very small, right? So when you're creating product in Sri Lanka, it is a different issue. Now, it's confusing and it's wrong to conflate the challenges the government has with regards to operating digitally with the challenges a product company selling to consumers in Sri Lanka has with a company selling to global things or a service company, right? So one of the problems in a service company is people are migrating. Why are they migrating? Well, there are two reasons primarily for migration. One is lifestyle, the other is economic. Right? Our salaries are not as much as you can get in Australia or Singapore or UK or US or whatever, right? The other one is, of course, it's the environment, and especially last year was a huge impact on people thinking, is this a place for my children, and leaving. So that's a problem in that segment. So government, if you look at the government digitization, that's an entirely different problem.
Yeah,
that is really ICTA.
No, but what I'm trying to understand here is it's good that you brought it up because and separate the two, because what we think and we've been taught to think is the fact that government own every industry, so they're supposed to do every single thing from A to Z. Yeah. But what you're saying is you didn't wait for them, you just found, you wanted to build a product, you went ahead, you did it. It's like, simple economics. And the market share is out there in the world and not just in Sri Lanka. That's understood.
That's the power of digital products.
Exactly. So you don't have to go there.
You have the world, yeah.
Why, let me ask you before I come to Brandix, but as the former chairman, why are we not pushing to educate that particular aspect to the people and try to tell them, listen, if you want to do something, A, B, C, D is here, proceed. You don't have to wait for somebody to come and give the handout, which we have been told. I think it is integrated in our DNA that if you need something, you got to go beg from the government. But, like what Sanjeev said, it ain't the case.
No, absolutely, Mahesh. See, as Sanjeev said, that's what I said. There are certain public institutions that are to focus on the foundational elements, awareness. Now, what Imran said again is digital literacy, right? Cutting across all of security and all of that. So that doesn't mean to say that as the IT industry or product companies or manufacturing environments that we are in right now has to basically wait for things to happen on that front. There are certain things we could do. It's just that there are foundational aspects. For example, now if there are people leaving, for example, that has to be fixed on a different point, because the value proposition that people are seeing is very different given the circumstances here. But if you look at really what drumbeat you want to set as an organization, whether you are a services, now both PAC and both Sanjeev is more product companies, for example, also, but then there are service organizations where we provide it as a service, the software services companies. They can basically leverage on what we have and move forward, but there are certain elements that we have to ensure that we keep in hindsight, because again, if it's a salary proposition is very different and it's very compelling, and also the quality of life that is offered, that decision is not only about yourself, it's again about the next generation, as Sanjay mentioned. So those are elements that we like to ensure that the upper different governmental levels sorted out. But I also agree that there are the technological advancements and all that, it's on us. For example, innovation is open innovation that every country is moving ahead on, Mahesh. So those are collaborative initiatives. You can continue to do so. You don't have to wait till governments move.
Lakini, why? I am not seeing it. That's why I'm asking this question. So please treat me as someone who does not know anything about this industry, and that's why this entire exercise is here for me to educate myself. So people who are watching also educate themselves. If by any chance, what are the things that are happening that is not in our purview, which are actually success stories? I understand we have a lot here. So do we have a lot more?
Actually, yes. Obviously it has to be a lot more. But Sanjeeva's is possibly one of the best stories these days. In the current era, it's one of the best. Then BoardPack. There's a whole bunch of, there's MintPay, there's EdSenid, there's a whole bunch of startups. And we can see that they are improving. Actually, one of the fundamental things is earlier, even us, Sanjeev is different. Actually, he grew with the correct model. You need to get funding. You need to invest. So the culture here
by
was,
yourself or look for investors?
No, look for, actually, most of the funding is from outside. So you have to start a little early and keep doing it. So now now I'm glad you asked this, because there's an ecosystem now. This ecosystem, as I mentioned, ICTA, /Com, Hatch, FITIS, there's a whole bunch of organizations which are doing accelerators, mentorship, and connecting also with international firms. There's this N Ventures now. Just to mention Nsinga. It's an AI-based textile industry company. 15 million, isn't it? It was acquired for 15 million a couple of years ago. That group has basically invested money back into a Singapore-based startup incubator. So things like that. So this has to be a lot more. And if that happens, I mean, there's enough talent here. Like I mentioned, there's
Is it so?
I think
is
so.
Is the talent really there?
So talent is there, also affordable. You can interpret it anyway, like affordable can mean cheap, but it's not really that. It means it's good talent for a good price compared to some of the other regional countries these days. So we've got the essence, I think. So awareness is a big problem, because as you mentioned, we've only got clocked in 600 odd companies that are startups in a 22 million country.
What is the ballpark figure here? What do you think, like, you know, for Sri Lanka to be a noticeable nation in this particular industry, what exactly would be?
I suppose it's actually more than the number. These companies have to be bigger. A lot of them are at startup mode. Like I said, lots have gone into the same thing, like e-commerce or education, which is the closest thing they can tap into. But if you go overseas, those may or may not be the competitive areas. Maybe they should get into AI and be more creative of what international companies would want. So that awareness can be done by the accelerators. I think the young people, I mean, they are reaching out rurally as well to schools, etc. I mean, it can be better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Imran, you mentioned India prior with regard to having a proper policy in terms of, you know, digital ideology as a nation. This is where we are heading in various sectors. But what can we learn and from that particular country? If you're saying, you know, India is leading the pack, it's not that hard for us to learn from them. Because they are basically investing here in this country as well in enormous level. So what can we learn from them?
Yeah, I think that not just India, but I think also Israel is also a good example in many ways, because it's a smaller country, has far less resources. So this one of the biggest complaints is that scale, right? Israel has no scale. It's a very small country with very few people, right? So they cater to the globe. So there, for example, and also in India, the success story has been the ability to marry their diaspora who have reinvested in their country in terms of not just capital, but also technical know-how. Having also, bureaucrats. Lucky and I on a panel in a couple of hours with a gentleman from India. He was talking about the BJP has MPs who are technically competent, right? And so they've been in power for 9 years, but even the Congress had, who know about technology, who know, and they're elected.
It's the same case in Singapore, isn't it?
Singapore, Israel, right? So that I think the key thing is we lament the fact that we don't have capital, but we have a diaspora of millions. His diaspora, I'm diaspora, right? We came back, right? But we've gone out to the world. We've right, and we've seen it, and we want to contribute, and we're back. And
you might have citizenship issues.
There are more.
I don't have citizenship. I have here.
Yeah, more. There are more people who can do brilliant things. Why are they not engaging with us? And
that's the thing.
India is able to do that.
That is, I mean, I want to go in for a break, but before that, let me ask from Sanjeeva very quickly. That's the thing that I have a conundrum with, because the people who know how to do it and the ones who are designing it, two different spectrums. They are more political oriented, looking at, you know, what kind of this and that. But the guys who know how to do it, they keep quiet. Why isn't that synergy not occurring in a manner where we can actually do better? Like, I don't think you're in part of any of the government policy, decision making, any forum. I don't know.
So I was on the ICTA board for short time. I left after.
No, we know that.
Yeah. So, but there was it's not a. I don't think it's a. And I've been on various government advisory boards over the years on various forms. Right. It is not a matter of saying you're not tapping the people who know how to do it. But there are systemic problems in how government buys software, for example. Government treats software like buying a building. How do you buy a building? You write a spec. You write a thing saying this building should have this kind of stuff, and the building will last 20 years and so on. You can't build software like that, right? So the procurement architecture for buying software is fundamentally wrong. That is why these projects keep getting killed or die or don't produce. And it's not a Sri Lankan problem, it's a global problem. Government projects globally fail like 70, 80, 90% of the time, right? So we have to innovate, and if you look at how India was successful, you got to look one step below. It wasn't actually BJP; it was before that. The Aadhaar project started before Prime Minister Modi came in, and he was going to kill it. But then he was convinced, because Nandan Nilekani, who was the guy who started doing it, was able to convince him this is a transformative power for India, and they continue to do it. And Nandan Nilekani is a private sector guy who went into government at a cabinet level position and had the full authority to build this out, right? So they went out of the normal mode of building it. They didn't go to some Infosys contract and give a big contract saying build an identity platform, write a spec. No, they just got down to it. There was a massive team of technical people and very strong government support. Without that, you can't deploy something like digital identity for a country.
Indeed. Let's take a short commercial break. I'm in conversation with founder and CEO of WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarna, founder and executive director at Boardpack, Lakshmi Vijayasundara, COO of digital transformation at Brandix, and also the former chairman of ICTA, Oshada Senanayake, and CEO of Tricenca Australia, Imran Furqan. Let's take a short commercial break. This is our special presentation on digitizing Sri Lanka. We're trying to get some ideas, thought processes into the public space so that we can actually think a little bit different, like what Sanjeeva said, think out of the box. Let's take a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to our special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. Founder and CEO of WSL2, Sanjeeva Veeravarna, founder and executive director at Boardpack, Lakshmi Vijayasundara, COO of digital transformation at Brandix, Oshada Senanayake, and CEO of Tricenca Australia, Imran Furqan. All of them are here with me this afternoon in order to discuss about this. Let me go to Sanjeeva once again. Sanjeeva, I want to start a company that sells products to the world. What should I do?
So to make a company that sells digital products to the world, you need some people who know how to program. You need internet connectivity. You need the physical facilities to work, which is primarily air conditioning, networking, internet connectivity, and power, right? But beyond that, you need ideas and you need the money to fund it. So funding is funding means basically, because salaries for software engineers is quite high. To get a high quality engineer, you are looking at least 300,000 rupees a month probably to get a really good quality engineer, probably even significantly more. So that means you need the money. So you need to raise money. So there are investors who will give money. So and then you need the ability to handle risk. That is, our culture, we have another problem in our culture against startups is, if you fail or if the startup dies, you're called a failure.
Yeah.
Right? You're not like, okay, you know, an investor who put the money, you know, what's our normal mode? If you take a loan and don't pay it back, break the legs.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the normal mode, but there's this sort of feeling of like you're scared that you might lose the money. If you are investing in a startup, that should be money you can forget about. Otherwise, don't invest in a startup. This Rajan Anandan, who's now one of in a VC firm in India, but he's a prolific investor, angel investor, Sri Lankan guy, actually lives in India and Sri Lankan origin. His statement about angel investment is, an angel investor is somebody who can invest some money and who, if that money disappears, has no problem with it, right? But angel investment, if it does well, can give you 100 times that amount of return.
Do we have examples like that?
Angel investors.
I mean, like, you know, things that actually worked well in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan ideas that actually went beyond yours.
Yeah, so there is a company called 4Axis Solutions, which has a adult coloring app. You know these coloring books that children do? There's adult version for stress relief, right? They are one of the top rated apps on the Apple App Store, and they make very good money. A bunch of kids out of university started it and doing great. right? So there are these kind of ideas, and it's only a very small company. The number of people, I don't know exactly how many now, maybe 30 people, 50 people now. They started with 4 people. So there are these ideas that have been, when somebody has an idea, they get together, they work on it, and then they get the money that they need and get on with it. Now that one, actually, I don't think they raised money at all. They were able to basically, they figured out a way to get some income going along, and they were students when they did it, so they didn't need an income to start off with. But if you are somebody working as a, say, an architect in a tech company, and you're earning ₹1 million a month, now you're going to give that up and start a company. You need that some level of salary replacement. You can't give it up completely. So the investment you need to make a startup is also not this ₹5 million kind of investments that we see a lot of people willing to make. You need a proper investment, and the proper investment then must be justified by possibility of proper return. Not
that
guaranteed.
means you really need to have a proper plan.
You need to have an idea that has the legs to fly. It may not fly, that's why it's called an investment, there's a risk, but it has to have that potential that it's going to fly.
Lakshmini, do we see with all these startups that's coming in, that they are taking the risk that is required, or is it, I'll check the waters, how it goes, and if it doesn't go their way, they move to something else?
I mean, I think it's a mix, really. There are certainly these parties that Sanjeev is talking about, and also these accelerators have come in now. So the original idea of, bootstrapping, doing our own, that kind of thing, that's been there for a while. So that's still there. Maybe it's like a 80-20 maybe. But now there's a lot of angel funding. People are taking it. We see people going overseas, not really trying to do local work only. I'm not saying, as he mentioned, 22 million people, there's good domestic work, but international is hundreds of times bigger. So we must, I think, encourage our industry to look out. Because that's where the money is, right, and bring it back. So answer is yes. So there's a lot of that. I think the young people are getting more and more interested in this sort of investment, getting into the VC, PEs and things like that. So that's quite encouraging. So I think in the future we'll see a lot more. Again, if you look at the statistics, it's still very low. So I mentioned Nsinga a while back.
Yeah.
So there's only a few like that to mention. We should have maybe 30, 40 of them to mention. That's not there yet.
Can Sri Lanka really lead in this space regionally, globally? Because we can't be doing every single thing what the other countries are doing and then try to be at the forefront. But what can we do different that is quite, have the opportunity that the world is looking for, and that we can provide that particular product here or service or whatever?
Yeah, Baisha, and I absolutely believe the fact that we can really differentiate on this front. For example, if you take the startups, I'll just allude to what's happening across the world. If you look at India, they have minted 111 unicorns. Unicorns means startups that's valued by venture funding as valued at $1 billion. There are 111 as of today, right? The numbers might differ a bit, but the real interesting part is in 2021, they basically minted 45 unicorns within that year. Last year, another 35. This year is just about 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken. If you go back to Sweden, for example, I'm referring because you can, if I refer to India, we can look at the demography and say, look, they have a wider scale. But Sweden has 10 million in population, less than half of us, right? They minted 35 unicorns, that is startups valued at 1 billion apiece, right? And in 2016, they haven't had even half of it, right? In 2010, they've had only 3, right? But the interesting part is the funding, as Sanjeev said to your earlier question. If you want to start up with the idea that you want to really trigger up and implement, it's the early stage funding that we have issue. As Lakshmini said, based on the Startup Genome report, it's the early stage funding that's a big miss.
Where can someone look for funding? Obviously the go-to place is the government. If the government is not the place, then
Good point, Mahesh. That's where we believe, as again, we shouldn't bank on just governments coming into play. If you look at the other countries, it's not just the governments coming in. For example, I'll give a personal example. Today, Brandix is investing on the spiralation incubator run by ICTA, right? We are the first private sector entity to do so. Why? We are apparel industry entity. One might ask why are we investing?
Exactly.
And we are investing on early stage funding without the expectation of any equity or control, as Sanjeeva mentioned. We have no interest of basically controlling.
Why are you doing it then?
Why we are doing it is very simple. For us to basically hold our sway as a manufacturing entity proudly based in Sri Lanka, right? Across the value chain, you need to transform digitally. And you know how AI is coming in such a strong state. For example, machine learning, RPA is out of the window and now it's IPA, robotic process automation, intelligent process automation. Now if you have to hold sway, we need to leverage on local tech, local solutions. Well, yes, we might not have island mentality and certain solutions, of course we may bring in internationally. But the majority of solutions has to be local. For example, our own manufacturing execution systems are built by our very own people, for example.
Imran, this may sound like a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But what I need to understand is, like, we talk a lot here, and you all actually said a lot of things that is occurring in this entire industry, which we were not that much privy to, or we were aware of it. But it's fascinating to know that this is happening on another level, and it is continuing on that level. What is the economic mileage which we can actually, if we do this right, that Sri Lanka get, because the president kept on putting a figure saying around $6 to $8 billion a year. Is it that because tourism is the only thing that we bank on for a higher amount like that, and we have textile, we have all those usual culprits, but this is not the usual one. This is an opportunity for Sri Lanka to change, especially after this economic crisis. We can actually move towards something like that. What do you think, like, what would push the people in order to understand the importance of this sector and try to harness the benefits out of it, rather than, there's a lot of jargon. People don't understand. They don't know how to come into it. Only thing that they know is to switch on a computer and switch it off. But that kind of level. But then you have the education system. Are they going in that level of, are we teaching our children coding from coding onwards, understanding into getting into this industry, understanding digital technology in terms of digital current, all that. So what do you think in terms of where we are heading and what we can do different in order to get the best out of that space?
First thing we need to do is stop having these targets, right? Because
stop having this
targets, 6 billion, 5 billion, because this is an industry where the rate of growth can be exponential. So therefore, there is no reason to, when you start putting targets, then you sort of, the thinking
like
is
failed.
Yeah. Because there are two aspects to it, the way I see it is. Number one, how technology can be used to, again, so I say digitize, not necessarily digitize government, but digitize everything. Okay? So our education system is a mess, and I think it's ripe for digitization. Our logistics, we're trying to become a hub that requires a tremendous amount of digitization.
Infrastructure.
Apparel, the traditional industries we are in. I know people who are doing digitization of tea plucking, and the whole process of intelligent agriculture. So the kind of productivity gain in that respect is unbelievable, and I'm not going to put figures because we can change it to a complete. The other aspect is these exports that we're talking about, that the president keeps talking about and everybody has been talking about for long. That is a very, very difficult kind of thing, and I'll tell you why. We had this target of 5 billion, and I was part of the team that put together that target about 10 years ago. And at that time we were having about 1 billion in exports, and now we have 1.7. So I think targets is not how you look at it, right?
But that's the driving force, isn't it? If this is not impacting, and if you're not getting the bang for the buck, this basic question is, why should I then engage in this? Because that is what the normal person would think. Now, if I'm a business person, I put so much of money into tourism and I lost. And I come up with this idea saying, hey, okay, IT seems to be something that I can actually benefit. And you're saying the figures are not that good.
No, I'm not saying the figures are not good.
Then how do you...
You're making a mistake. What I'm saying is we should not be obsessed about figures, right? So now a businessman, if they are incorporating a software solution, right, for example, say take Lucky's solutions to the board automation thing, right, the board will decide whether it's just simply cheaper to print stuff and do versus putting a lot of money into her solution, but they didn't assess it with productivity, right? So I think companies are doing that all the time. Brandix is doing it, everybody else is doing. So I think if you want to make it at a national level, then you've got to create a conversation about, okay, what are my returns? So that's the conversation about career opportunities, right? Where, you know, the kind of returns you get for the money you invest in education. So I think the conversation is about, at a personal level, what is my ROI, right? In terms of investing in a particular line of education. From a business perspective, what is my ROI? Because the government is not putting any money. I don't think there's any money put by the government. So there's no reason for them to talk about. So the economic impact is unfathomable because we have never even started really doing it, right? But you can look at countries like Sweden, India. Israel is my favorite example, right? Because the way they have transformed the agriculture, the productivity gains in the last 10, 15, 20 years, right, is unbelievable because they have no water. And now they don't even have peace, right? So I think rather than, you know, obsessing about particular figures and how much can be brought into the country, I think that's a mistake the industry made as a body. They promised certain figures and they did not deliver those figures. Now nobody really has any credibility in those figures. For me, I would say take particular industries, see where they have been transformed by the industry, talk about those success stories, and then you will see.
Sanjay, you wanted to?
Yeah. So Imran knows because I've been fighting with Trustcom for many years on this topic. The industry, the industry body in Sri Lanka has made a bunch of projections. Starting in 2012 was going to be our 1 billion number, and so on, right? And every time we miss a number, they put a higher number in front further down the road.
And they changed
right? You were part of it, and I fought with all of you guys multiple times on this topic, right? And the problem is, it is not just a number, because it has been used to drive government policy.
Exactly.
IT industry was given a lower income tax rate, half from everybody else, right? During the Yahapalani government, that was the case. It was 28% maximum for everybody else. IT industry was 14%. Yes. Then during the early stages of the Rajapaksa government, they put a thing saying if an IT company goes public, there was no either capital gains or some other tax was zeroed, right? So
benefits were given.
Benefits were given at the cost of the people of the country, because the number does matter, because Sri Lanka needs to grow exports.
Yeah.
IT and I don't know why we combine them, but this IT and IT-enabled business process outsourcing has a combined export goal that has been stated, and these organizations have been touting it, and benefits were given. But the numbers that were done don't make any sense. That's what I've been complaining about for many, many years, because when you do the math, it cannot be done. We say we have this many people working and we are going to get that much income, and we focus on this body shopping numbers. Because we talk about...
Because it's enticing to talk about.
And let me give an extreme example of value creation, which is WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp, we all know WhatsApp. WhatsApp was bought by Facebook. Do you remember for how much?
Yeah.
$19 billion. Do you know how many people were working in the company at the time? 46, right? 46 people were working in the company at the time. Was bought for $19 billion. So the point is, in the software industry, value is created disproportionate to number of people, right? Massively disproportionate. The average revenue per employee is a number you track. Offshore
What
industry,
is the figure then?
Offshore industry is $30,000 per person. India is $30,000 to $40,000. Sri Lanka is right about that. Employee per employee revenue. Google makes about $1.5 million per employee, right? A WSO2 maybe a little bit over 100K now per employee, right? We're way low yet. We need to go. IBM is about $250,000 per employee revenue per employee. That is a value creation, and you can't get that by selling yourself by the hour, by the day, by the week, by the month, because you're not, you're doing work, and as time goes along, that's going to become more and more commoditized, and now technology, AI in particular, is going to eat up a lot of the lowest end of that stack. So it is good to have a number, Let me give another example. Israel, Israel's obviously interesting country these days, but Israel, Sri Lanka, we talked about IT exits, right? These are these exits when you sell a company. We've only had like 10, 15 exits in the history of Sri Lanka, and our entire total is less than $100 million.
Yes.
Israel in 2021 had $16 billion of exits in 1 year, right? So now Israel is a very special case because of all kinds of things. So let's not take that as a serious number to go after. The point is the value creation is not from just doing work for somebody else. It is taking an idea that's in someone's head, making a product out of it, selling it 1 million times, right? Maybe for zero rupees, which is what WhatsApp was.
When you look at all the big companies that have made a huge bang around the world, it's exactly what you just mentioned, from Facebook to WhatsApp to anything. It was just when you look at Apple, just a company that was started in a garage. But let me take a short commercial break. This is our special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. We'll be right back with the panel. Welcome back everyone to our special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. We're trying to get an understanding exactly where the potential in this particular industry is and what we can do in order to get the best out of it and try to address the biggest factor that each and every one of us are thinking. Now, every business that we do here in Sri Lanka needs to bring some kind of yields back into the country. If not, then there is no point in doing any of this, because if the money is going elsewhere, then why are we working so hard? Our economy is broken. That's something that we all know so well. We don't need to stay in lines. We don't need to go through that entire hassle what we went through last year, where we couldn't figure out how to pay for this, how to pay for that. Still that exists, so we need solutions. My panel this afternoon is founder and CEO of WSO2, Sanjeewa Weerawarana, founder and executive director at Board Pack, Lakshmini Vijayasundara, COO of Digital Transformation at Brandix, Oshada Senanayake, and also CEO of Trisank Australia, Imran Furqan. Let me start with Lakshmini. Artificial intelligence is the next stop that we are talking about everything, and it has actually exponentially catapult this industry into a level we really can't wrap our head around. What's the opportunity there? What I understood from this entire conversation is that we are doing a little every single corner, but everybody is not cohesively coming together and try to figure out, okay, this is our game plan, this is what we're going to do, you guys do this, you guys do that, and we go ahead as a nation, and this industry leading the economy. That's basically what I'm trying to understand. AI is another opportunity. Again, I keep saying this word, but all what I see is problems. But how can we actually harness that at least? Let's forget about what happened. From now onwards, how are we going to keep moving ahead?
Absolutely. AI is something that we cannot ignore. So if you take the world, if we in Sri Lanka think that AI is going to hit us like in 5-10 years, we're in an island, that's not the case. Because when, ChatGPT, that was the fastest 1 million users. So, that's the tip of the iceberg really. So if we don't get ready for it, it's going to hit us. It's actually going to be the threat you talk about. So the opportunity and the threat both are there. So I think in a sense, at least, like the government has set up a national task force. So I feel there's hope. Lots of private participation also. So as Sanjeewa said, we can't wait for government to fund us, but they've asked us to come and figure out what to do. So I'm personally quite hopeful that if we can figure this out for the country, then the rest can happen, because IT and digital doesn't really need lots of external force. But then there are fundamental things, like if you take AI, there are certain industries even in Sri Lanka that we can do pilots and build really good solutions that can be taken to the world. So you have to come back again to, it means that certain institutions in, let's say, agriculture, government will have to intervene a little or maybe a lot to ensure that data is available, certain structures are available, things like that for these startups to, or digital companies to come and work on it. So it's a long way, but I'm really glad that we've started at least with a task force and a early adoption attempt, let's say. So which means we have a chance. And AI certainly, because AI is relatively new, we can, I mean, there's lots of problems unsolved yet. Unlike traditional systems where, you know, foreign companies probably already have done it. So we have to take that opportunity, I think.
Oshda, do we have an action plan to utilize the benefits of this industry and try to address the biggest issue, the economy? Can this industry lead?
Absolutely, Mahesh. So as Lakshmini said, I'll again allude to what we are doing also. See, it would be a case of who moved our cheese at the end of the day if you don't adapt fast. AI is not something that you can expect in 2 or 3 years. It has happened yesterday. So for example, if we are to hold our competitive advantage, for example, as manufacturing entities or any other entity that we talk about, you need to infuse it now. And how you do it is, there's this interesting report that is released by MIT organization. So one aspect is AI is where you use it to empower people. People think that AI is going to basically take off jobs and all of that conversations. Yeah. Well, that might happen. There are conversations around that, but then it's more about enabling people. Second point is, how do you infuse AI over the data you have, right? And then bringing that insights out to ensure that you bring that data-driven mindsets across organizations. If you don't do that, Mahesh, take for example, manufacturing, you're competing on efficiency and cost. So Sri Lanka, if you take the apparel industry, we are competing with China, we are competing with Thailand, we are competing with Vietnam, we are competing with Bangladesh, right? At the end of the day, it's a cost arbitrage that we are talking about. Of course, quality comes in, but that's where AI brings in, it will cut across the value chain itself. Whether it be from the quality front, we are talking about computer vision AI now, CVAI. The large language models coming in, gone are the days where you have to have tons of coders to basically develop on that. You just upload it and run those. So again, it's becoming a commodity. So you need to take advantage, and that's where I feel that we are in the best position to leverage fast and hyperleap the other countries. And that has to happen.
Why are we in the best position?
I believe because we have the tech and the know-how to ensure that we see it's resetting.
Is the infrastructure there?
Here's the thing, as I said, the foundational elements has to be there. Again, if you don't have internet, there's no startups, exactly. There's no
Do access. We have a good connectivity?
I'll give an example again. We were one of the first to basically start 5G trials. Where are we today? We are still on trials, right? We were the first to start 4G, right? So my point is, the foundation elements has to go. Otherwise, again, as Sanjeev said, it is trying to build a house without the foundation. I have a different connotation. It's like trying to put in an air conditioner into a house that doesn't have a roof. So again, the foundational elements has to be there. If you don't have your data pillars right in an organization, you can't talk about AI, infusing AI. So it's a journey, but that has to be basically bootstrapped. That's where it is.
Imran, we're running out of time. What do you think? Where is the potential right now for Sri Lanka? Let's forget about what has been happening thus far. Where can we start right now and move forward?
Well, the first thing we do is we need to, I don't know whether you've seen that famous meme, how do you avoid making mistakes? Experience. How do you get experience? By making mistakes. Yeah. So I think the key thing to do is to infuse that quickly across from school level to the highest levels of our government, forget government, sorry, across every sector, right? That making mistakes is not a problem. Number two, we need to do quickly is this obsession about control, obsession about either funding, traditional sources of funding like banks and others. I think you need to start, making them understand nobody has the money. That's a good way I tell people, right? Now nobody has the money, but everybody has the money, right? So where do you tap sources of finance that you did not tap before? And the third thing is about partnerships. For me, the key thing is we don't do enough partnerships here in this country with people around the world, whether they are diaspora, whether they are not, right? We don't do partnerships enough. We do, certain companies do, but I think from an individual level, we don't do enough. I think we need to do much more of that.
Sanjeev, I'll give you the last word. What do you think? Where should we move ahead?
So I think it's important to remember that every idea somebody has in Sri Lanka, there's 10 to 100 other people who have the same idea. Ideas are cheap, execution is not. So Second part is cost arbitrage is not a sustainable competitive advantage because then you're raised to the bottom. So we have to have, if you're going to use digitization as a strategy, there's got to be something which is a competitive advantage if you're looking at a country strategy. If you look at an individual company, whether it is Boardpack or 4Axis or WSO or and, there are 100 other companies that are building great products in Sri Lanka, that's an entire different metric. When you look at a country as a strategy, every country has been desperately trying to repeat the success of Silicon Valley and the US in tech creation. But the success of Silicon Valley and tech creation in the US was not a country strategy. It was the ecosystem and the environment of the country and the entrepreneurial nature of the American people, which, there are lots of changes happening in that universe now, but there was a huge environment that facilitated that. But it wasn't the government. So I think what we have to remember is, but the government in Sri Lanka can facilitate by supporting, by giving people opportunities, being a customer, buying local software. Local companies can help by buying local software. So there are things we can do, and we have local advantages which we must use. Because every idea we have, everybody else in the world has it too.
Exactly. There is a aspect of this entire conversation which we didn't even touch, and I think that we have to move into another segment onto that, which is e-commerce and how we can actually streamline that and get because that's exactly what lots of people are looking at right now. But we are running out of time. Thank you very much for taking the time to come here and share your ideas. Thank you very much, founder and CEO of the WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarna, founder and executive director at Boardpack Lakpini Vijay Sundara, COO of digital transformation, and also the digital transformation at Brandix, and also the former chairman of ICTA, Oshada Senanayake, and of course CEO of Trisank Australia, Imran Furqan. Gentlemen, lady, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you guys giving your time. This is, obviously what I understood was it's a vast subject that cannot be broken down in 1.5 hours and try to understand. But this is a good point. Let's keep the conversation going. That's all the time we have for you tonight, this afternoon. Thank you very much for watching. This is our special presentation, Digitizing Sri Lanka. See you soon. Bye for now.